I'm sure you're familiar with the STEM movement, right? So it would seem that you would be more, so are you also familiar with STEAM?
Yes,
with the reintroduction of art into all this?
Exactly.
So it seems
right.
like that is
so
kind
STEM,
of...
science, technology, engineering, and math, or medicine, and then A for arts, make it STEAM, and then D for design, make it STEAMed, and then STEAM, the H for humanities, makes it, across the disciplines. So, there's a bit of joking about that, but on May 7th, the National Academy of Sciences published a report from a 3-year study about integrating science with humanities and arts education and the benefits to people. And some of the evidence is that Nobel Prize winners have a very high degree of multiple disciplines, polymaths they're called, that they're often musicians or artists or writers or performers or craftspeople or glass blowers, that Nobel Prize winners have a much higher level of crossing over discipline than even the members of the national academies in the US and similar institutions in the UK, and which are still higher than the general population. So that's the kind of evidence that people are looking at to suggest that we should continue to bridge these disciplines and give students the chance to experience the design process and be sensitive to the arts and to the empathy of the human experience. I think that's really important for future technologies.
So I think we're kind of into the field of Leonardo's laptop at this point.
Yeah.
Which, would you briefly describe in your own words the book, Leonardo's laptop?
So Leonardo's laptop, the subtitle is Human Values in the New Computing Technologies. And the idea that human values should be driving future technologies was always important to me. And when people ask me, what's the next big thing in computing? I say, trust, empathy, responsibility, and privacy, which conveniently is TERP. So I thought that was an easy way to remember it. But trust, empathy, responsibility, and privacy. And I continue to advocate for the design of technologies that raise the level of trust between participants. And we can see how the failure of that with the fake news and scams and spams and cybercrime and so on, the attention to human values, to privacy, to security, to trust was insufficient. We needed to do more. And my hope and belief is that as we go forward, there'll be further attention to those things. So there's, within HCI, the development of what's now called value-sensitive design. And a wonderful report called ethically aligned design, which talks about shifting from the current focus on artificial intelligence and robots to a more human-centered view of the future, which is very much Leonardo's laptop.
Okay, wonderful. So with the book, what you were trying to get this message out, that we should be focusing more on your TERP message. And have you always kind of been inspired by Leonardo da Vinci? I mean, he plays a really big role.
Yeah, he is. Right.
Where'd that come from?
Right. Well, I think Leonardo was remarkable human being. I read last year's book by Walter Isaacson on Leonardo da Vinci, which, although I had read about 25 books on Leonardo preparing to do the book, Leonardo's Laptop, this one really pushed forward the idea of how amazing Leonardo was and how much his capacity to draw was influenced by his knowledge of science, and how his knowledge of science was amplified by his capacity to draw. So his portraits of people were the first to show proper musculature in the neck and the face, because he had done about 30 dissections of cadavers. Very sort of difficult thing to do in his day, but he would go through that process to study the muscle and the nerve structure. And that scientific knowledge led him to make beautiful art, but the art and the careful drawing led him to make scientific discoveries about musculature and so on. But his drawing of the circulatory system in the body was 150 years in advance of William Harvey, who's usually given credit for understanding how the body's blood circulates. In Leonardo's day, the belief was that the blood just sort of flowed from the heart out through the arteries to the fingers and vanished. The idea of circulation was not there. But Leonardo's drawings, his careful drawing, his capacity to see carefully, enabled him to make that interpretation. He didn't write that fully, explicitly, but it's pretty clear if you look at those pictures, he understood what was going on. Also, his careful precision to watch the way the feathers of a bird flapped and whether the bird, get this, I mean, whether he was able to see whether a bird flapped down more rapidly than they flapped up. Okay? It's a pretty careful thing that you have to tune your vision to. And he saw those patterns of swirling in the air and swirling in the water, and he was able to make these generalizations across disciplines and across areas to really understand the world in a much stronger way. So he advanced the world in lots of ways.
So you use Leonardo da Vinci as kind of the muse for new computing in your book, and I was wondering if you think there are any current Leonardo da Vinci's in this world that we should be paying attention to.
It's a great question. The one that leaps to mind, well, there are some heroes of mine, of people who were influential, who continue to write wonderfully, but the one that leaps to mind is a young woman researcher named Neri Oxman at MIT Media Lab, who's done amazing and beautiful artwork that's installed in museums around the world. And she publishes these terrific papers in, engineering journals about new chemical processes, new ways of forming glass. So, I mean, she does some, just clever things. So I guess I think of a few, but she made a refrigerator-sized 3D printing device that used hot molten glass. Wow. And she could control the plasticity of the glass as it flowed out and as it moved around, and created these amazing shapes that are just beautiful to behold, but interesting as art, and they also are publishable as engineering work. Other things, she's just, she understood that you wanted flexible and pliable things, and she found that the most flexible, pliable material was the shell of shrimps.
Really?
So she bought 10,000 pounds of shrimps. She got the the shells, and she crushed them and ground them and made a plastic material, or a plastic-like material, that allowed her to make just aesthetically beautiful 15-foot wings that you could just wear and, imagine flying. But her combination of deep understanding of chemistry and engineering plus devotion to artistic projects make her my candidate for today's Leonardo.
That's lovely.